Featherfall by Merrill Sands, read by Gwynneth Rausch. An angel stands in my garden. I set my tea down, surprised I hadn't seen it there earlier when I'd put the kettle on. Early spring in London certainly can be dark, but the angel glows like the brightest white marble. The breeze ruffles the feathers on its wings, though, so those, at least, are not stone. It's possible it's some renegade piece of statuary destined for Mrs. Turcotte's garden next door. Well, not possible, probable, likely even. At least once a year, something meant for her garden is delivered to mine, possibly because the delivery people are understandably frustrated by where to put yet another birdbath, statue, paver, or rosebush in Mrs. Turcotte's exuberantly decorated garden. My garden is much less densely packed with things. I have some lovely fuchsia and a wisteria growing over an old fence, a single birdbath, one ancient concrete cat that lost an ear to a falling branch some years ago, and a few roses. Red roses, of course, though that clashes with the hot pink of the fuchsia. I should have got white. Maybe I will next time I visit the nursery. My eyes slide back to the angel. If not one more attempt by Mrs. Turcotte to break some kind of world record in garden tackiness, what was it? A prank by some neighbour child? A weird gift from a secret admirer? The thought that it actually belongs in my garden is ridiculous. I should phone someone and have it removed immediately. But I'm running late, and there've been delays on the Jubilee line this week, so I need to get going. I leave my still steaming tea on the counter, grab my handbag and am out the door. The angel is either a mistake, which will be rectified by the time I get home, or I will call someone to have it removed tomorrow. Either way, I have other appointments, other responsibilities. A random statue in the garden can wait. Things are not great at work. Tina has come in with the flu, coughing so loudly everyone in the office can hear her. I got the flu jab months ago, but I'm still nervous about catching things. I hate being sick. Twat, says my cube mate Lisa. Like I want to get the flu when Clive's parents are coming into town. You know they'll come with 1,000 plans that we'll all have to do together. And we'll have to go to Harrods and look at that dreadful Princess Diana memorial again, and have our pictures taken with it again. Maybe if you get sick it'll be for the best, I say. Lisa can never stop complaining about her in-laws. They're snotty, presumptuous and bossy. In other words, enough like Lisa that they and Lisa simply can't abide each other. Then you have an excuse to not go back to Harrods, and you can pass the flu along. They'll be as miserable as you. Lisa's bright blue eyes squeeze shut, and she lets out a proper loud laugh. That's one thing I like about Lisa. She's genuine. If she thinks something is funny, she laughs. If she thinks something is interesting, she says so. If she despises someone, you know that too. No mysteries around Lisa. I almost tell Lisa about my angel, the way I told her about the bright blue birdbath that mysteriously appeared last summer, only to be relocated to Mrs. Turcotte's garden a day later. But something stops me. Right now, my angel is mine alone, and I rather like the thought. In fact, I am looking forward to going home and having some tea in the garden next to it, provided it's not raining. But rain is looking likely if the strange low black clouds skittering by outside are any indication. The angel is still there when I get home, and the rain hasn't started yet. I dump out my morning tea and make some fresh, then take my cup outside to get a closer look at the angel. Darkness comes early in the London spring, so I haven't long before both wet and dark will drive me back inside. The angel stands facing away from the house, hands spread out as if it's casting a blessing on someone much shorter than it. As I approach, I realise it can't be stone. The skin looks far too velvety and soft. Perhaps it is some kind of terracotta covered with a textured paint. The wings cover up much of its back and legs, so its gender is a mystery until I round the front. From this angle I can see clearly that it's a he. Actually, it's missing genitals, but the Roman nose, broad shoulders, and defined pecs leave no doubt as to its gender. His gender. I look up into his face and am startled by the stormy countenance someone has sculpted there. I had expected an expression of contemplation or even a sort of pleasant, shy smile like the Mona Lisa's. But this is a rage-filled angel, with frown lines and narrowed eyes and down-turned mouth. A smoky smell emanates from him as well, the sense of ozone and charcoal, as if the angel has flown through lightning and conflagration to stand in my garden, to ooze rage and disdain all around. For a moment, I am reluctant to stay next to him. His expression is not just fierce, but forbidding. I shudder and try to push aside the thought that the angel is observing me, judging me, and not liking what he sees. It is a curious feeling and most uncomfortable. I'd flee inside, but I hate being a silly woman like the ones so often seen in movies or found in books. Someone who runs from everything and always trips and must always be comforted or rescued. Besides, I know what he sees or would see if he could. A middle-aged, plump woman with frost-touched hair and a penchant for wearing bright greens and pinks, especially at the same time. Someone who lives alone and assuages her loneliness with teas and cakes and a glass of sherry before bed. Nothing and no one interesting or creative or worth anyone's notice. The piercing feeling of being watched only grows stronger, and it is getting darker. I go in and finish my tea and find a local 2020 match to watch. But it is the angel and not the cricket that I am thinking of as I slip into bed and turn out my light 2 hours later. Tina is not at work the next day, nor are James and Timothy. By noon, Claire is coughing as well and heads home. Lisa stops joking about the office plague when the radio reports that hundreds of cases of something like the flu have been reported in the Greater London area. The trip home that evening is uneventful, but troublesome. Few are on the street. The tube is carrying only about half the people it normally would. I see one man cough on the platform, and almost instantly he stands alone. He looks up blearily and sees me at the far end of the platform. His shoulders sag and his skin is ashen. He gets on the next train, but I wait until the one after that, just to be sure. The long walk from Canada Water is quiet, but that is normal. As I approach my flat, the little red fox that lives in one of the local gardens slips through some bushes, gives me a quick look, and then disappears under a hedge. Sometimes I see him in my garden, but rarely. My garden generally sports only squirrels and the occasional rabbit, although blue tits, robins and magpies sometimes visit the bird bath. My angel is in the garden, hands still out in a strange gesture of blessing that does not go with the rage on his face. Apparently Mrs. Turcott hasn't sent anyone to collect him yet. I go to her door and knock several times, but though I can dimly hear 1940s swing music coming from her flat, Mrs. Turcott doesn't answer. I consider leaving a note, but there's no point. The angel can stay where he is until Mrs. Turcott wants him. It's not as if he's doing any damage just standing there. I warm up some leftovers, make my tea, and decide to eat outside. It is a lovely evening. The light spring breeze is warm and inviting, and it hasn't rained all day, so the garden seat is dry. I take my dinner to the seat and perch upon it a bit precariously. Middle-aged women really shouldn't eat with a plate on their lap, but I don't care. The angel still looks angry, so full of hate and a desire for retribution. The feeling of being watched is back, but I don't let it get to me this time. Let the angel see the dumpy, pathetic woman who lives in the flat behind him. "I don't know why you look so," I say out loud. "I'm sorry you have to put up with my garden when I'm sure you were destined for next door. I don't suppose you can see over the fence, but Mrs. Turcott has oodles of angels and gnomes and dogs and cats, and even, I think, one lion with a broken tail. I only have Missy." I gesture towards the one-eared cat, my sole garden companion until now. "Missy lost her ear to a falling branch during a storm a couple of years ago, so you must forgive her that deformity." I know I am rambling, but I never have anyone to talk to anymore, not since Jeremy died in that stupid accident on the M25, and not since Drea, my sole sibling, has moved to Northolt, which isn't that far, but it might as well be John O'Groats for all Drea calls or visits. I've rung her a few times, but she always seems too busy to visit, so eventually I just told her to call when she had a free moment. That had been 6 months ago. I haven't heard from her once in that time, not even at Christmas. Thinking of Christmas is bad. Christmas 10 years ago was Jeremy's accident. Christmas 2 years ago was when Mum died. Christmas this past year was the first where I hadn't seen anyone at all, not even Drea, for even an hour. I won't get through dinner if I think too much longer on that. Next year maybe I'll go abroad at Christmas, see the markets in Prague or Budapest. I'll still be alone, but at least there will be no reason to think anyone in those cities ought to be thinking of me and isn't. I used to have a cat, I say, to get my thoughts elsewhere, but she died eventually. I've always wanted another one, but somehow it hasn't happened. You know how it is. One day turns into the next, turns into a week, turns into a year, and before you know it, so much time has passed that you didn't notice at all, and you wonder how you walked through it so blindly. You haven't accomplished anything you set out to do, except maybe for doing some weeding in the garden and visiting Jeremy's grave a few times. But it's not very close by, so I don't go often. I forget I haven't explained Jeremy to the angel yet, but it's not important. I know who Jeremy was and is to me, and that's enough. Thoughts of his quick laughter and ginger beard scratching my face when we kissed used to come more quickly, but these days pulling up the memories can take a concerted effort. Memory is so deceitful and cruel. One day maybe I won't remember him at all, like he never existed. Well, isn't that a rotten way to get my mind out of the sadness of Christmas? I shake my head and finish my dinner. The peas are cold, which I hate, but I eat them anyway. "I wish you could tell me something more cheery," I say. "It seems I'm going to be maudlin this evening, whether or not I wish to be." The angel doesn't move or say anything, of course, though for a split second I could very well believe he would. I don't know why. Perhaps the feeling of being watched has lessened just a bit, or I've just got used to it. Maybe his expression looks just a touch less forbidding. A proper angel, I say, feeling a bit more bold, would keep me company, which, to be fair, I guess you are. Here I am rambling about my boring little life, when yours must be so exciting. I mean, to be able to fly and to have seen the face of God, right? Isn't that what an angel's existence is like? Doing the will of God, knowing what that will is, not having to guess at it like we mortals do. I swear I see a quick expression of surprise cross his face, but that's just the last bit of twilight playing across my garden. The angel is still angry at something or someone. I go inside and put my things away, and wonder where I ought to spend next Christmas. 2 days later, it's 5 minutes before it's time to go home, and Lisa, who has been gossiping elsewhere as per usual, rushes back to our cube, face red, cheeks drenched with tears. Janine just told us she saw a list of the people who died today of this new disease, and Tina was on the list. I am so shocked I can only gape, mouth open like an idiot. Tina was just here a few days ago. Coughing, yes, but hardly someone you'd consider likely to die. A chill runs down my spine and freezes me to my marrow. Is this a new flu from Hong Kong or China, or some biological agent? Lisa wipes her face on the sleeve of her spring jumper and says, "I'm not coming in tomorrow. I can't risk getting sick and passing it on to the kids if it's really this dangerous. Clive's parents are just going to have to stay home this weekend." "I'll see you next week then," I say. From the worried glances my co-workers are throwing each other, I think it might be safe enough to come into work tomorrow, as I think everyone else is going to stay home. I grab my jacket and head out the door a few minutes later. The lobby is empty, when it is usually full of people planning to meet at local pubs later. But not tonight. Even the tube is deserted, not crammed with people as it always is in the early evening. Walking from the station to my flat is distressing. The street is empty, and the quiet is oppressive. Even the sound of an early evening rain shower on the streets is welcome, just to hear something. The angel is still in the garden, but I don't have any attention to spare for him tonight. I turn on the news to see the latest reports. New plague centred in London. Those who have left the city should remain away. All those still in the city are advised to stay home, says the crawler at the bottom of the screen. One of the reporters is interviewing a doctor whose voice is calm, but whose eyes are red-rimmed and slightly wider than they should be. He is saying, "There is no reason to panic. Everyone should wash their hands regularly, stay home, and avoid other people for a few days. We're working on deciphering just what is causing this." The reporter asks, "Is this a new flu?" The doctor shrugs. "We don't think so, but it's possible. Everyone should take precautions and let us do our jobs." The doctor's stiff shoulders and frightened eyes tell a different story. He has no idea what's going on and no idea how to stop it. He is overwhelmed already and expects the worst. His calm words are just to try and avoid panic among the populace for a few days, a few hours, maybe even for a few minutes. The doctor himself, however, is still panicking. My heart sinks. If medical professionals are already at their wits' end after only a few days, what hope is there? I feel dizzy, nauseated, and for a moment I think I've caught the disease. But quickly I recall that the first symptom is a cough, not nausea. I'm sick at heart, not in body. How many people will be cut down before they find love, before their child's first birthday, before their first kiss? Even I, the most colourless of people, have dreams. They might not be important to anyone else, but I'd always wanted to go to Land's End, to tour the Guinness distillery in Dublin, to find the perfect area rug to match my favourite tablecloth. I've always thought that there would be time to achieve my goals, no matter that they were small and unimportant. Will I now have the chance? Is it too late? The room spins and I put my head between my knees. Isn't that what you are supposed to do when suffering from vertigo? Someone raps on the door. Merrill, are you home?" It is my sister, Drea. Her voice is shrill and high. I fight the dizziness and stand carefully. I go to the door and reach for the lock, but hesitate. Could Drea be ill? Will we die together in my flat? "Are you sick?" I call out. "No, and don't be an idiot. Let me in." I hesitate, but there's no point in leaving her outside. If she's sick, she's sick. But she's my sister, so I'm obligated to let her in no matter what. I open the door and Drea spills into the flat like water rushing over a dam. "What took you so long?" As usual, she rambles on without waiting for a response. "Have you seen the news? This thing is really bad. They're saying that London is going to be quarantined and they want everyone who's gone to stay gone and those who are here to stay put, but that it's too late even if they do. They say there are cases in every city connected to London by air. Paris, Frankfurt, Amsterdam, New York, all have the sickness there too. In less than a week, the world's gone mad. There's riots in Madrid, Philadelphia, Sydney. What are we going to do?" I shake my head, stunned at the news, but I harbour a hope that Drea is wrong, or more precisely that the they she has been listening to are wrong. Surely no disease could make such inroads so quickly. "Henry's out of town for work," she continued. "I'm sure I heard Muriel coughing this afternoon, so I couldn't stay there." Muriel is Drea's invalid stepmother, who lives in the flat upstairs from her and Henry. For all my hesitation at letting Drea in, I am still appalled. "So you just left her there? She's bedridden." "There's a nurse who checks on her every day. I don't need to be there." "If the nurse comes. Who knows what the situation will be by tomorrow?" "If she's already coughing, she's dead by now," says Drea. I am shocked all over again by her behaviour, so unlike the mother hen my older sister always has been in the past. For a dreadful moment, she is more a stranger to me than the people I ride next to on the tube every day. "Put the tea on, dear," Drea says. She glances outside towards the street. "It's so quiet out there, isn't it?" She leaves the front of the flat and moves towards the back. "Is everything locked up? We don't want hooligans rushing in here." Hooligans? That seems a strange word for Drea to dredge up, like something out of a bad movie. "In every emergency there's always someone willing to smash a window or steal a car," she says with smug certainty. "And this is certainly an emergency. They'll probably start with the pubs, don't you think? Get drunk and then let loose." "There are no pubs nearby," I say. That had been a sore spot with me when I'd moved in, but over the years I'd learned to appreciate not being able to just stop for a drink every time I walked down the street. "When did you get a statue for your garden, and why isn't it facing the flat?" "It showed up a few days ago. I think it belongs next door." "Oh yes, your neighbour with the statue fetish," says Drea. "My friends always find my descriptions of her garden amusing." With a sinking feeling, I realise the chance that Drea's friends will ever gather again is very small. Even if the scientists and doctors find a way to beat this new plague, some of those friends are likely already sick, possibly already dead. I have never felt less like drinking a cup of tea in my life, and never more in need of one. I put more water in the kettle and turn it on, then look in the pantry for something to fortify the tea with. I'm thinking whiskey. I see the bottle of 12-year single malt Glenfiddich in the back of the pantry and reach for it. I won't insult it by adding it to the tea. The tea can have the cheap stuff, but next to my cup of tea, I'm going to have a tall glass of the 12-year. If Drea and I survive, we can buy another bottle. This one is for tonight. Drea is gone when I wake up. That's just like her, to leave without saying goodbye. She probably heard from Henry and has gone to meet him, assuming the military haven't closed too many roads in between Northolt and wherever he is. I have only met Henry once, and did not care for him much, mostly because he made it clear he did not like me. I am too fat and old and boring, and he's willing to say so out loud. Henry is a large man with a big vocabulary and expansive gestures. He expects to be showered with attention wherever he goes. Being treated like anyone else makes him burn with indignation, and he rapidly becomes sullen and argumentative. Drea doesn't appear to notice. Maybe that's how it has to be. If you're going to be married to someone, you have to be willing to overlook their biggest flaws. Jeremy was always good at overlooking my complete lack of skills and general level of boringness. In return, I overlooked his occasional drunkenness and a general tendency to be late to everything. accept his appointment with death. When I first got the news, I had flown into a rage rather than collapsing in sorrow. How dare he be on time for that singular appointment, when he should have been home with me? How dare he? My anger had burned itself out after 2 days, and I'd finally sunk into a deep depression that nothing had been able to shake. I'm a little groggy from all the Glenfiddich of the previous evening, but not truly hungover. I decide to go out. I walk the streets, not even bothering to use the subway to get under the A2202, as there's no traffic. I cross the Thames at the Tower Bridge and walk on the roadway. Only one bus trundles by me. Otherwise, the streets are mine to use as I please. I don't normally walk so much, but today I don't care. I wonder, will I ever see these sights again? The Shard, the Tower, the Eye, the Houses of Parliament, the mighty dome of St. Paul's. They have been part of my life for so long, but I'd barely seen them in years. Now every glimpse of each one is a treasure to be savoured. A lone security guard sits behind a desk at the National Gallery and waves me on in, and I have the museum to myself. I go directly to the room displaying Caravaggio's The Supper at Emmaus. I love the energy of the disciples, the attention they're giving Jesus, while at the same time Jesus is rather coyly blessing their bread. The dichotomy between their energy and his calm has always struck me as humorous. Today the painting takes on a new meaning, much more tragic. The disciples walked all day with a stranger, but didn't recognize him as their teacher until that very blessing of the bread depicted in the painting. I'd always thought, how stupid! How could they follow Jesus for years but fail to recognize him after only a couple of days apart, and then suddenly recognize him over dinner? That wasn't funny. That was an utter failure as a disciple or even as a person. But aren't we all like that? Wasn't I like that? Haven't I walked through my life not noticing the things around me, being alive but barely living? What have I done to deserve the gift of life given to me all those years ago? How much time and talent have I wasted in a dead-end job, in a lonely flat, without even a cat for company? Well, I have a concrete cat, but still, I am ashamed. I take one last look at the Caravaggio, this time feeling even more unworthy. I do something I have never done before. I rest my hand on the painting, letting my flesh touch the work the master had so carefully crafted so many centuries ago. After all, who else will be by, and who will ever know? I leave the gallery. The guard is gone, but the doors are wide open, welcoming in anyone who is still alive, who might want to see the national treasures. But silence is all that comes in the doors. I walk back to my flat, which takes hours. Along the way, I see that the Mirror has managed to push out today's issue. Plague empties London, Manchester, tens of thousands dead. The front page shows a picture of Heathrow, planes lined up at gates, never, it seems, to move again. I wonder how many people are left in London, or even the country. Maybe just outside Britain things aren't so bad. But somehow I know that is wishful thinking. If the rest of the world were doing fine, would they leave us to die alone? Wouldn't there be international aid arriving? I pick up a copy and find more pictures inside. Bodies in the Thames, in the streets, sitting in cars, hunched over in gardens. Although I haven't seen any, nor have I looked for any, surely the smell will sooner or later turn London into an unbearable hellhole. If Jeremy was still alive, I'm sure he'd find a way to turn the situation into a joke, and I would have laughed, just to hear him laugh in return. But ever since his death, few things make me laugh, or cry, or feel much of anything at all. Mostly, I have felt drained, as if holding on to what little life I have takes everything I've got. Today, though, the combination of empty streets, empty gallery and closed shops pushes on me. This is too big to take in all at once, but still, it is oppressive and frightening and so sad. My feet and legs are screaming with exhaustion by the time I get back to my flat. I grit my teeth and bear it. I flop down on the garden seat, an unexpected surge of grief forcing tears from my eyes, making my hands tremble and my gut clench in pain. For the first time since before Jeremy died, I sob uncontrollably. "Why is this happening?" I say when I can speak again. "Do so many really have to die? So many people." Tina and others from the office, like Claire and Timothy, are they all dead now? And what about Lisa and her children and my sister and even wretched Henry? Fear and sorrow squeeze my chest until I can do nothing but concentrate on breathing. I am dizzy all over again, but I can't get the air I need. The world is too full of agony, too full of an immense sadness I can't wrap my head around. Almost I wish I could go back to feeling nothing at all. At least that didn't hurt so much. I glance at my misdirected angel and then wonder about Mrs. Turcotte. She hasn't been in her garden since before the angel came. I should have checked on her long before now. I am a terrible person, a rotten neighbour. A wave of fear sweeps over me. I have ignored the one neighbour I ever speak with during a time when I should have been holding tightly to whatever human companionship I can still claim. Despite the pain radiating down my spine to the tips of my toes, trepidation and shame drive me to rush to her flat through new falling rain. This time I pick up one of her decorative gnomes and smash a window so I can reach the lock and let myself in. The glass cuts me, but I barely register the blood. What does a cut or two matter when the world is falling apart, possibly ending? It only takes a few moments for me to find Mrs. Turcotte, dead on the floor of her bedroom. Dried blood covers her lips, and something white glints in her hand. Her expression is peaceful, but the roiling in my heart is not. Alameda Turcotte will not be getting her angel back, or adding more gnomes to her garden, or fixing the window I just broke. She will never share tea with me again, or offer me cuttings from her plants, or sit on her own garden seat and sing to her newly potted petunias. For a long moment I think I will collapse, or scream, or maybe vomit. I lean against the wall and close my eyes until the moment passes. Then I stagger out of the house without looking at Mrs. Turcotte again. I end up in the middle of the street, confused. I don't know what I want, but I do know what I don't want. I don't want to go back to Mrs. Turcotte's flat, but I don't want to go back to mine either. I limp slowly down the street, feeling drained and exhausted, and wondering if there is any place left to get a drink, assuming I'm strong enough to walk there after a day of marching through the city. I come across an off-licence whose door is propped open with a chunk of cement. "Hello," I call out as I walk inside. Most of the shelves are bare. Clearly the hooligans Drea was speaking about have been here. Someone has smashed every cabinet containing the truly expensive stuff, leaving only a few of the less expensive bottles behind. I grab the first thing I come across without even looking at its label and place a £5 note on the counter. It's not enough to pay for the liquor, but it's all I've got in my pocket, and if the proprietor and I are lucky enough to survive, I'll make up the difference later. Dimly, I realise I haven't eaten since yesterday, and that alcohol really ought to be consumed with food, but I have no appetite. I return to my flat and go to the garden to share a drink with my angel. I don't even bother with a glass. The garden seat is wet, but that barely registers. I lift the bottle to the angel in a toast. He is still angry, but somehow He is less so. Now he seems sad. I guess you know what's going on, I say. An angel would be perceptive like that, right? I take a swig from the bottle and discovered I've come home with a bottle of port. Not exactly as alcoholic as Scotch, but it will do. I'd share, I say, but I don't suppose you imbibe. For some reason this strikes me as funny and I laugh out loud. I drink the rest of the bottle in silence and lean against the angel when I am finished. He seems the only truly solid thing in my life. A single feather wafts past my face and falls silently to the ground. I look around the garden and see that a few other feathers have already fallen. I lift my face to my angel and see that now his face is lined and weary, haggard and desperately sad. I scan the face again, carefully, truly looking, truly seeing it, perhaps for the first time. This is a face in pain. My angel isn't molting. He's dying. The next morning, more feathers have floated to the ground and have wilted into a soggy white mess behind the angel's perfect feet. His face is thinner today, I'm sure, and even more pained. I have no brilliant idea what to do for the angel to make him more comfortable, so of course I go in to make tea, and even though it's barely 7 a.m, I put a healthy dose of the cheap whiskey in it, the stuff I used to give Drea and her friends on the few occasions I saw them. The bottle's been open for several years now, but I have no idea if whiskey ever goes bad, and what it would matter now even if it had. I turn on the television and find only one station still broadcasting. The crawler says, "If you are still in London, stay inside and wait for further instruction." The S is missing, as if whomever typed it died before completing the word. Or maybe he or she was just in a hurry to leave the station and get home to loved ones before the end. The desk is staffed by someone I've never seen before, someone very young and dressed casually. An intern, perhaps. The only person still at work. Reports coming in from around the globe indicate that this is a worldwide phenomenon, the youngster is saying. But scientists have tracked the initial cases to the Docklands area of London. My heart sinks. Here. It started here. How can that be? Most citizens of London have fled to the countryside, but now reports are coming in of piles of bodies in hedgerows and ditches, says the impromptu newscaster. He is sweating. Yesterday there was word out of the Centers for Disease Control in the United States of being close to identifying the causative agent. This morning, when no further word had been received, the remains of a local unit of the US National Guard broke into the CDC and discovered the researchers dead. We have received no reports from Russia, Australia, China, or India. No one seems to have been able to identify the disease or know how to treat it. The young man starts crying and says, "I don't even know if anyone's watching this." Then he gets up and walks away from the desk. My heart breaks for him, and tears slide down my own face. The crawler continues, "If you are still in London..." I turn off the television and sit back on my couch, barely able to believe that the disease could be so all-consuming. How could every doctor and every scientist be so stymied? All over again I see Mrs. Turcotte's body in my mind's eye, the blood on her face, the whiteness in her hand. With a shock, I realized she had been holding a feather, a white feather. My angel. My angel brought the plague here. That was his purpose. That was why he'd come to Earth. He hadn't been misdelivered at all. He'd come to Mrs. Turcotte, but maybe she'd realized why he was here and she'd grabbed at him. Perhaps the reason his hands are held out in front of him is that he had been warding her off, not offering a blessing. And then, somehow, he'd made it to my garden, before he became so much like a statue, and he'd started spreading disease. But Mrs. Turcotte had been the first to die. My angel is a murderer. He is here to kill 7 billion human beings, and it looks very much like he is going to succeed. I take my tea out and walk straight up to the angel, who is now slightly hunched over, his wings lax and touching the ground. The tips of his feathers are in the mud. His strong pecs have withered to the point where I can see ribs through his velvety skin, which is now weathered and dingy, no longer the pure white of Italian marble. "So this is your doing?" I ask, not bothering to cover the bitterness and disgust in my voice. I slap the angel in the face. The ice-cold flesh is hard as stone, and the slap stings my hand, my arm, right up to my shoulder. I don't care. "Why?" I ask wretchedly, my breath ragged in my chest. "How could you do this to us? I don't want to die. Mrs. Turcotte didn't want to die. Or Tina, or any of them. What did we do to you that you murder us?" I slump to my garden seat, wet as it is, and weep again until I begin to hiccup. And finally, far past the moment, the rain returns in buckets and soaks me to the skin. I am quiet once more. I grab the angel's hand and bow my head in contrition. His flesh is so cold, as if he belongs in the upper reaches of the atmosphere, and not here in a more temperate condition. "Forgive us. Love us," I beg. "I want to live. And so does that young man on the television, and Drea, and even Henry. Let us live." I kiss the angel's chilly flesh. Then I get up and I scuttle into the house without even looking at my angel, because I'm afraid I will see pity on his face rather than rage, and pity is something I cannot cope with, not today. It is only much later, after I have dried off and gone to bed, that I remember my tea is still outside. By the next morning, even the young man on the television is gone, and every station consists of static. I feel weak, and remember I haven't eaten for 2 days. My pantry is nearly bare, but I find some biscuits and a small package of cheese. I eat it all without tasting it. I return to my angel and see my teacup on the garden seat. It is full of rainwater. With trepidation, I look into my angel's face. Today he is looking back, and he is wretched. More feathers have fallen, but I feel that this is not what bothers him. "I don't understand," I say. "You were angry at something before, and then unhappy, and now sad. Why?" I struggle to remember anything I'd learned about angels on the rare instances I'd gone to church or read the Bible. They are messengers of God, never following their own will or choosing for themselves what they want. They exist to serve, nothing more. Is that why my angel had been angry? He'd been told to come here and bring disease, and he hadn't wanted to do it. No, that isn't it. I stare into his eyes while more feathers fall around me as my angel's very life oozes out into the soil of my garden, and I realize he hadn't wanted to come because fulfilling God's will would mean his own extinction. Coming here is the last thing he will be able to do, ever. Whether or not he likes humanity or cares what happens to us, he had not cared to sacrifice himself, but he'd had no choice. What God decreed, he had to obey. And so here he is, and he's been angry. In sympathy, I reach out and clutch his hand, and I cry again. "I'm sorry," I say in between sobs. "I'm sorry you were the one God chose, but you've done what you came to do. You obeyed, and you succeeded. Can't you go back now? Can't you go home?" His face exudes nothing but wretched resignation and sorrow. My own anger returns, the sweeping rage I had felt when Jeremy had died. My angel might not have had a choice, but I do. I am not like him. I can choose. And I choose to take the part of my angel. He hadn't asked for this, any more than I had, or Mrs. Turcott, or Lisa, or the young man sobbing on the television, the only employee left after a week of plague plucking away his colleagues in the newsroom. I stand and stalk out of my garden, a woman on a mission. St. Mary's isn't close, but still, it's not nearly as far as Trafalgar Square, and I walked there yesterday. I pass my little fox, who runs down a deserted lane as I get close to him. I have never seen him out in full daylight before. Perhaps his world has been turned as upside down as mine. I do not stop until I stand in front of the church. The door is unlocked, the inside pristine, as if waiting for the parishioners to return this Sunday morning for service at 10 a.m. They're not coming back, I scream at the altar, a dark thrill filling me, now that I've finally something to shout at. You've sent my angel to kill us all! I pick up a hymnal and throw it at a window. The glass smashes with a satisfying tinkling sound, and shards fall onto the carpet. Why? What did he do? Why send him? Couldn't you have done it yourself? Were you just keeping your own hands clean? Even if you wanted us dead, why kill him too? My rage overwhelms any attempt to keep shouting, and so I pick up hymnal after hymnal and throw them at the windows, the altar, the candlesticks, the organ. I throw them until there are none left, and then I retrieve those that fell short of my goal and throw them again. I exult every time I hear a book connect with a target. Slap, crash, bang. I look around, but there's not much left I can destroy. A few brochures lie on the table and I rip them to shreds. A Bible sits on a chair and, after a pause, I pick it up and rip all the pages out. I scatter them everywhere. It is not long, though, before exhaustion and lack of food force me to my knees. My legs and arms tremble from the exertion, and I am too tired to think. I merely kneel and wait until I am strong enough to pull myself up. I hate you, I say as I leave the church. For his sake. It takes me hours to stumble home. I raid everything else I have in the pantry and realise if I live much longer, I will need to raid something more substantial, like the Tesco across the way from Canada Water. But I am too tired to contemplate that right now. I merely eat whatever I have, drink the bottle of wine left over from some gift basket I'd won in a raffle at work, and go to my angel. I smashed it all, I say simply. That's an exaggeration, but I don't feel like elaborating on each broken window and overturned candlestick. For you. I hate him because he killed you too. I look up at my angel, in weariness and grief. A tear sits in the corner of his right eye, and his expression is tragic. This is breaking his heart. We are breaking his heart. My own heart will never be mended, I know, but I can hardly say so to the angel. We each have to grieve in our own way. I go in and straighten up my flat, as if I'm expecting visitors. I have a headache when I go to bed, and wonder if I'll even live to wake up. I think I won't be raiding the Tesco after all. I wake up coughing, and there's blood on the tissue. My head is pounding, and I have no appetite. Every joint complains, so I lie in bed for a while and wonder how long will it take me to die. A day passes. The grey light of early spring plays across my bedroom walls, promising a summer that will never come for me. I expect to be angry, or at least grief-stricken at the thought, but I'm not. The birds will come back to roost in the rowan tree, and the butterflies will flit through my bushes. I won't be there to see, but that will be all right. Rowans and butterflies and birds were on the earth long before people. and they'll continue their own lives without us. It is only for my angel that I mind it. Humans, perhaps, were a bad idea to begin with, but my angel had never done anything wrong, or disobeyed, or caused God a moment of worry or distress, and yet he had been sacrificed. Night falls while I'm asleep. I wake to early morning light, and through the bedroom window I see a bright blue sky, decorated with only a few puffy clouds. A more beautiful morning could not be imagined. I am so weak, I can barely lift my head off the pillow. But I have to see my angel one more time. If I see nothing else, I want to see him. Standing is too painful, too hard, and ultimately impossible. I end up on all fours and crawl to the door. Getting it open is a stretch, but eventually it swings away and my path to the garden is clear. I move one hand, one knee, and rest. Then the other hand and the other knee, and rest. It takes me until late morning to crawl to my angel, and my limbs shake violently from the sustained effort. I collapse on the feathered-covered ground and manage to position my head so I can look up into his perfect face. Each eye holds a tear today, and he is clearly miserable. His odour has changed to one of roses. I don't know what that means, but I hope it means God will recall him home before it's too late for him. The rest of us can die, but not him, not him. It's okay, I say weakly. I hope he can hear me. This isn't your fault. It's not fair that God made you come here and kill us, that he didn't care enough to keep you safe either. That's the most unfair thing of all. My voice cracks and I am barely able to get out the last thing I want to say. I would save you if I could. You are my angel, and I love you. That's all I have strength for. Strange, I hadn't even thought about how to get back to the house, but now I know I needn't worry about it. The door is open. Perhaps my little fox will figure out he can come and go without fear of humans now. Perhaps he will relax his tired, wiry body on my flannel sheets. Or maybe the birds will roost in my curtains. The thought makes me absurdly happy. Let the wild things have the earth again, as it should be. It is getting too difficult to breathe, or even to think around the pain in the back of my head. I close my eyes. Before awareness fades completely, I feel it. The ice-cold tears of the angel, that he doesn't just cry for humanity, or even for himself, not anymore, but for me in particular. He cries for me. It is all the memorial I will ever need, and more than I ever could have wished.